Good afternoon. So I have recently purchased this plot of woodland that backs onto my garden here, and I thought I'd do a video today explaining what I've brought, why I've brought it, and what I'm planning on doing with it. So for the why I brought it, that's quite a simple one. I mean, if the opportunity arises to buy a section of woodland, you're going to buy a section of woodland, aren't you? It's kind of a no-brainer. But to be honest, the main reason is purely a selfish one. So that is my garden down there. And as you can see on this section here, this is the clearest part of the section. And this is where, if somebody was to buy the land, they would spend most of their time. Now, depending on who buys it, depends on how that would go. It could be that somebody buys it that's like-minded like me, and I really enjoy having them around and I make a new friend. Equally, it could be somebody that I absolutely hate and I don't want to see, in which case I can't use my garden, which would be quite problematic if that happened. On the flip side of that, you could end up with somebody who buys the land who does absolutely nothing to it. So the previous owner hasn't done anything to this for the last 5 years, and that's actually starting to cause problems now. So all of this section here is getting very overgrown with brambles. If somebody was to leave this just as it is and let nature take over, then the brambles are going to continue to spread, come down and cause more problems to my garden. So it could be just as bad having somebody who's very involved in the land as somebody who's not involved in the land. So by owning the land, I now have control over this area and what goes on. Now I say that, I don't have full control because there is a woodland preservation order on it, so it does restrict me slightly with what I can do, but I want a woodland, so from that point of view it's not a problem. So from here you can't exactly see the boundaries. They are clearly marked with wires, so I do know where the boundaries are, but it is a little bit difficult to actually see them. So the area itself you can split into 3 separate sections. So over the far end there you've got the power line section, which is kind of self-explanatory. Up there we've got the oak woodland, and then this section here is what I'm calling the field. So I'll go through each section individually and explain some of the interesting features and what I plan to do with them. But for the field, as we're in here, I'm going to start over in that top corner. So as you can see, I sort of have vehicle access. So this road here is incredibly steep and narrow. It is wide enough for trucks to go down. The bin lorry has gone down here earlier today, but to be honest, I don't think I'm going to get a delivery truck down here. And also this section here, that is quite a drop there. If you've got an off-road vehicle, you might be able to make it up onto here, but your regular car certainly won't. But we have got about 4 foot access there, which is useful should we need to bring something in that's on wheels. So we can bring something in there, but it doesn't bring you into a lot. But the main reason I've come over here is because just in this section here, about here, at the moment, you would say I'm in a woodland. But if you go to Google Street View, you can go back in time. So the road that's just down there, if you look across this way, you can set it back to about 2010, 2009, I think it is. So in 2009, this is a field. That's why I call it the field section. It was once a completely open field. Some point about 2010 they planted it out with these trees, because in 2011 all these tree guards appeared in the field, so each one of those has a tree in it. We're now at 2025, so 15 years later, and we've basically got a mini woodland. Now, because of the way the tree preservation order was put on, it now covers the new trees as well as the old trees, so that does cause a slight issue. Not a major one, because like I say, I do want a woodland, but I'm going to have to remove a few things from in here to have a little bit more access. So they did seem to have some sort of a plan when they planted this lot out. At the front row you seem to have your low-growing fruiting trees. So you've got your crab apples, you've got your sloes, you've got your hawthorns going along here. So that should give quite a nice low front here. Behind that you have your row of hazels. So the hazels are a medium-sized tree, but they also coppice quite well. So if you cut them down, they'll re-sprout. So you can see here you've actually got quite a nice clump of shoots coming up from the bottom of that hazel there. And then behind it, it seems to be oak trees. Now the oaks are planted quite close together. It might be helpful to thin those out in the future, but at the moment I'm going to focus mainly on getting access and getting it a little tidier, and then I'll probably do a proper assessment when you can see what you've got. But the main thing that's concerning me, which I will have to take out, are these trees here. So they seem to be sprouting up everywhere. At first I thought they were silver birches, but I'm now wondering if they're some sort of popular. They've got a little bit of a silver leaf back to the leaf. I'm not entirely sure, But as they're coming up absolutely everywhere, I am a little concerned that they're just going to take over. Now, with the Woodland Preservation Order, if the tree is below 7.5 centimetres, measured at 1.5 metres off the ground, you can cut them down from the purposes of thinning. So that doesn't mean you can measure everything here and just clear the entire lot, but for this purpose, in this clump here, it's the oak that I want, so I can take out all these small ones that are growing around it to give that oak more space. So that is the plan. Now, the other thing I need to do is create some sort of access, because obviously this bit, not a problem, I can clear that. We've got the driveway access in, but then you go into trees, and that's not exactly helpful. Now, speaking to the previous owner and looking at old maps, there was some sort of driveway that went through here, and you can kind of see there's a ridge to the side here. Problem is, when they planted the trees out, I think they completely ignored the ridge, because that tree is planted on the flat section here, which I think was the driveway. The thing is, I'm only aiming for a path of about 4 feet wide, just for, well, partially for pedestrian access and partially for a shredder or something like that, because the electricity board want to maintain the other side. For them to have access would be good. Now, I'm battling my way through here, following roughly the line of what was the driveway, to show you this section here. Now, I think the driveway itself went the other side of that tree, but if we go through here, we actually get to a little clearing. So yes, in the small clearing here, you can see there's a holly, an oak and a hazel across there. That's actually the hedgerow. So the other side of that is the road. We're about 8 to 10 foot higher than the road at the moment, so we do have to be careful because it suddenly just drops off if you walk over that way. But you can see quite clearly behind me, there's the hawthorn I was saying about, there's the sloe, and there's one of the crab apples. So that does give quite a nice barrier there. But the main reason that you've got this clearing is these power lines that run overhead. Now, these are low voltage power lines. They're only 240 volts, only. But because of those, the electricity board maintains underneath here and keeps everything cut back so nothing touches them. That does mean that the lights got in and we've got a lot of bracken turning up. Now, I'm not too keen on having the bracken here. Not only does the bracken swamp out everything that's growing underneath it, and I would rather have things like the wildflowers that we've got growing here. It also means that it never really dies down, it just goes to this twiggy brown stuff on the floor, and that's a bit of a fire risk. So my plan is to try and remove the bracken if I can and have this more as wildflowers. But if we push our way through there, we'll make it back to where the driveway carries on to. This bracken is as tall as I am. So here we go. I think I'm now back on the original driveway, because again we've got this little bit of a ridge at the side here, and then it's kind of flat from there. Now, like I say, they have planted in what was the middle of the driveway, but I only want about 4 foot access. So if I move that fern away and trim some of the branches off the side of this tree, I reckon we should have enough clearance to get through there. So that should give me a nice path that meets up with the gate here. Now, the problem is I lost track of where the driveway went from there on. Now, there is every possibility that it actually used to go through my garden. At some stage in history, there was a caravan parked out there, and they levelled this section off for the caravan. So there's a possibility that the driveway went through there, then it was all dug up when they did that. But for now, I'm going to have to start putting in my own path, which means I'm going to have to work my way off this way. So I'm just following the fence line along at the moment, but I thought I'd stop in this area because there's quite an important thing to show you here. So this section, you can see all the tree guards popping up everywhere. There were trees planted in them, but the majority of them have died, and I'm not actually too disappointed about that. The reason why is because of that large oak tree over there and this large oak tree over here. So they are what they call parkland oaks. So they have grown in open areas with no competition around them, and that has allowed them to have those large arching branches that come down really low. There was another one that went off this way, but unfortunately it snapped off a few years ago. But again, you've got low branches here, and they only grow if they've got space around them. If you had trees growing around them, they'll grow tall and straight, and if you were to plant trees around them now, chances are those low branches would end up dying off. You'd lose the parkland oak. You might even lose the original tree, because the rot might get down into the centre of the tree and kill the entire thing off. And seeing as that tree looks like it's probably about 200 years old, I don't really want to do that. So for now, I'm going to try and keep that clear underneath it, try and encourage the wildflowers because that'd be great for the wildlife, and also keep that fantastic structure that we got there as Parkland oak. There are also some large silver birches along the fence line there. I'll work my way up so we can have a closer look at those because they're also quite interesting too. That's a Cotoneaster. That's a garden escapee. So that might not be too good to have here. I'll have to double check. I don't think that's going to be the UK native one. Right, carrying up. So we're now up on the top side of the field here, and we have got these absolutely wonderful silver birch trees here. Now, because of the size of them, they're probably at their average lifespan, so I don't know how long they're going to live for. But you can see this one's got the fantastic arch to it. It hangs right over because it's grown towards the light. It had the competition behind it, and it's gone off that way. Now, the reason these are growing here is because this is the original field boundary. So in here, there is a wire fence. It is mostly buried underneath this lot here, so I don't think we can actually find it. But there is kind of a ridge here to mark the boundary as well. But that means that these silver birch trees have been growing up through the fences. I mean, this is just fantastic here. At the base of this silver birch. So you got all that way up there. The tree is still alive. You got that branch hanging down there, and then you can just see all the way through it. The roots are all exposed here. So although they're not healthy trees, they are interesting trees. Now, under the tree preservation order, I can cut those down because they are considered dangerous trees. But I don't think I'm going to because they're not going to fall on anything. There's nothing to worry about if they land. So for now, I'm going to leave them as a fascinating habitat for wildlife. So we'll head back down to the fence line now. Now, some people would say, leave the brambles, they're good for the wildlife. Problem is, you can't actually access the land. I know that's the whole idea, is it's unsafe for the wildlife, because nobody can access the land. But if you can't access the land, then you can't get to the invasive things that you don't want, like the Cotoneaster. Right. Oh dear, almost there. Now I've made it over to the laurel here, which you might recognise if you saw the video where I cut that laurel there down, or where I put the steps in all the way over there. But yes, this laurel here is technically a hedge. It was planted as a hedge along the boundary at some point in the past, and it has just been left to get wild. Problem is, it is now flowering or fruiting. So you can see the large cherry things here. They are poisonous to us, but the birds quite like to eat them. I don't think they kill the birds. Problem is, they do grow absolutely everywhere, and there are laurels growing all the way through here. So if I can cut that back and maintain it as a hedge, that will also stop it from flowering, which will also stop it from spreading. That will also allow more light into this area here, so we can actually get some stuff growing. But underneath this laurel, there's something a little bit more interesting. So I hope the camera's picking this up, because I know it's not great in low light conditions, but under here we've got the remains of 2 sheds. So when I moved in about 10 years ago, the brick shed here was technically still standing. The laurel at the time was leaning on the roof and half a wall had collapsed, but you could still tell it was a shed, you could still stand inside it. So I know that there is a concrete foundation there. Now my plan is to clear all this area up and clean all the bricks up, because it was a lime-based mortar that they used, so the bricks clean up really nicely, and hopefully I can rebuild that in the future. Now in the UK you do need planning permission to build a brick shed. Now I don't know if I'll need planning permission for this or not, because the shed was already there. The problem is, because it's collapsed, technically it's restoring the old shed, but at the same time I don't want to get on the wrong side of the planning permission and be forced to take it all down again afterwards. But in the meantime, there's another shed here. So this was a corrugated metal shed with a timber frame. Now, because the timber frame has all rotted, and then the laurel has grown over it as well, it is all collapsed in. So I don't know what's underneath there. I don't know if there's a foundation or anything. But I am planning on clearing all that lot and putting a shed there as a temporary for my tools, because I don't want to really be walking all the way down to the bottom every time I need a spade or a shovel. So yeah, there is going to be a shed build going on there, and yeah, a lot of tidying up to do. But yeah, that's kind of it for the field section. So we're now going to move on to the power line section. So yes, this is the power line section, and as you may have guessed, there's power lines going overhead. So this is a narrow strip that runs up the side of my property. So that woodland just over there is actually somebody else's. The line isn't entirely straight going down that side, but yeah, there's not a lot I can do in this section. The electricity board do maintain it. These are what they consider to be high voltage power lines, so 15,000 volts. So they don't want anything going near that, because obviously it will short out and cause a problem. So they come through on a regular basis and cut the tops out of all this. Now that is brilliant from my point of view, because I don't have to worry too much about maintaining it, but at the same time I don't like what's in here. So you do have the odd hazels turning up, which are nice, but a lot of it is either the laurel here or the bracken. Now bracken I've already told you about. I don't like it because it's a fire risk and it smothers stuff out. The laurel, again, that also smothers stuff out. It isn't good to have in large quantities. So I would like to clear this lot of the laurel and the bracken, and possibly a cotoneaster that I can see down there. But at the same time, I don't want this completely clear. I do want shrubs in here, because obviously any wildlife that moves from that woodland to my woodland needs to have safe access. So by going through the shrubs, they get somewhere to hide. Now, it's going to be a slow process. I'm not just going to come in, rip it all out and have a bare patch. The electricity board would love that, because it makes it so much easier for them to work on. But like I say, from the wildlife point of view, that's not so good. But that will be a slow, ongoing process. But we're now going to try and work our way up the power lines, which is easier said than done. So we're now level with the bottom of the oak woodland section, so the top of the field section. I don't quite know what happened, but as you go just around this corner here, we're still following the power lines up, zigzagging along. Get to this section here. Again, interesting hump there, denotes some original field boundary, I guess. But the current boundary is actually a little bit further over that way. But yeah, under the power lines here, completely clear. Don't know why. But yeah, like I say, do have to be a little bit careful with what grows underneath them. I will try and encourage a few more shrubs up here, probably before I clear down there. But yeah, there's bracken up here as well, which is a little bit of a concern. Nothing major. And even up here, there's some laurels. So let's carry on up. Right, well I think I've made it roughly to the top here. So that pole there is actually in a neighbouring property. I can just see the fence line going through the brambles there. That large oak there is kind of in the corner, then the fence line I can see going down from there. There's a couple of trees on this side of the fence line, but most of the holly is on that side of the fence line, and that runs all the way down. It's hard to explain quite how steep this is, but where I'm stood right at this moment, my feet are probably level with the top of that pole over there. So it's really quite steep. I am thinking of putting a slide in all the way down. That sounds like quite fun, but might be a bit pricey. So yeah, the main reason I come all the way up here is to go for this section here. So the land size, I'm not entirely sure how big it is. It's probably only a couple of acres, bigger than I need. But this section was kind of a surprise to me. When I initially brought it, I agreed on the price, but I went, well, where are the boundaries? I need to check them. And this bit was additional to what I've already thought about, so I was really pleased about that. If we head into there, this is what I'm calling the oak woodland. So as you can probably tell, the oak woodland is mostly oak. At the bottom here there is a large number of holly trees. Most of the oaks seem to be of around the same age. Now, using some calculations, I have estimated them to have been planted roughly in the 1930s. Now that kind of tallies with the First and Second World War. They cut down a lot of forests. They then replanted them around 1930s. That probably explains why there's so many oaks of the same age. Unfortunately, underneath it there is a lot of holly. Now, going back to what I said about the tree preservation order, most of these hollies are under 7 centimetres at 1.5 metres off the floor, so I can cut them down without permission for the purposes of thinning. I can't clear the entire lot, but there's a larger one over there that I think would be good and requires more space, so I can thin out some of the others around it. There's also this here, which is a mountain ash, which is much better than the holly, so I'd want to clear the holly from the base of that to give that more space. So it is a case of working through. Again, this isn't something I'm going to run through with a chainsaw in a day and do. It is going to be a slow process. But I'm going to head down now because there is a clearing down there. So this is the clearing section. As you can see, the previous owner has cut a few bits down. Now the majority of these are missing their bark, so I'm pretty sure they were dead before they were cut down. Again, under tree preservation order, you can cut down a dying tree. To be honest though, if you can leave it, then that's better for the wildlife. I mean, woodpeckers want a standing tree, they don't want a laying on the ground tree. But yes, the main reason I brought you to this area though is because of that. So yeah, this area was holly at some point. You can see it's growing back where it's been cut. But where this area has been cleared, you have now got the moss starting to come back again. So underneath the holly, it's very dark, and because of the way the holly grows, it kills off everything below it. So you don't get a lot coming up. By clearing the holly, you allow the light down to the soil, you allow the rain down to the soil, and you should get new growth on the floor. And to be honest, I think that is a lot better. I love the moss, I love the ferns that will grow on there as well, and that will be so much nicer than all this holly. So with the holly, you get males and females. So the females are the ones that have the berries. There were a few flowers around in the spring. I'm sure this was one that was flowering, and I'm surprised I can't see any berries on it at the moment. But that is something else that I'll be paying attention to when I take them out, is if there's any female ones, I will leave them, because obviously we want the berries for the birds. You have to have the odd male one around to fertilise it, but I don't think we need quite this many. But I'm going to take a quick walk down there, because that is technically the path that was marked on the map by the previous owner. It's not a fun path, it's incredibly steep, but I'm going to walk down it just for entertainment purposes. So yes, this is where the path brings you out. You can just about make out the gate down there. So we are about halfway along the field section here. Obviously we've got the large oak there that I pointed out earlier with the low branches. So that's quite a nice position to come out. It is incredibly steep, especially on this bottom section. It is quite nice having a path here, so I might put it back in, but I'm certainly going to have to look at either doing a zigzag path or some steps. I do have to be a little bit careful as well as I go through here. So I said earlier about having the original boundary line just on the edge of the field. So that is the wire fence there. The problem is that is the barbed wire that runs along the top of the fence there as well. So I do have to be incredibly careful with where I work. But yeah, I want to show you something up there. So that means going back up the hill. Just stopping to admire the moss here, not just because I'm out of breath. I do need to make it all the way to the top though. So we've made it all the way up to the top boundary again now. So that is neighbouring piece of land. That is actually vehicle access for them across their land there. But yeah, as you can see, this section is quite clear for some reason. I'm not quite sure why, but in this we've actually got a couple of mountain ash turning up, and we've also got a couple of these which I thought were sycamore, but somebody told me the edge of the leaf is too jagged and therefore it's some sort of maple, so I'll have to double check on that one. But there's a couple of those around here as well. So by allowing the light in and getting rid of the holly, we will have a lot more variation. Problem is we have got a few brambles turning up as well, so it's pros and cons with everything, and that's the reason to take it slow. But there is a bit of a problem up along this top fence, which is off that way. So more exploring. And there's even a laurel up here. Those stupid things get everywhere. So yes, this is the problem. So this is an incredibly large cherry tree. As you can see, if I put my hand up against it, that is a big problem. Now, it's completely dead, so under the tree preservation order, I can cut that down. It is a dead, dangerous tree, no problem cutting it down. The problem is you can just about make out through the brambles there, the fence line. So if I was to cut that off, it's going to fall on the fence. Now, I'm not sure if it's a previous owner or the neighbour that put these ropes up. There are some ropes holding it in position. I don't know if they're going to make it better or worse. That is something I'm going to have to deal with sooner or later, because as you can see, it is completely rotten at the base. So I think those ropes are the only thing that are holding it. That and possibly another oak tree up there that it's leaning on. So I'll have to find out who the neighbour actually is, and then speak to them about how we go about cutting that. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one, that's for certain. But yeah, we're pretty much at the end of the land here, so that is the corner boundary there. So if we follow that down this way, yeah, we'll get back to the field. So as I'm coming along this boundary, I thought I'd point out a few things of interest. So you can just about make out a ridge that runs along this side here. So that is the traditional way that they would have marked a field boundary. It would have then probably had a hedge grown on top of that. There is a wire fence that works its way down there, so I know that is definitely the boundary line. But there's also some quite large holly trees growing along here. So there's a possibility that this used to be a laid holly hedge. It would be nice to reinstate that at some point. Obviously there's lots of ideas here and only me, so it's going to take a while to get round to it. But as these are so large, I'm pretty sure that that's what was originally along here, was a laid holly hedge. I think the rest of them that are growing through that way have either spread from this as layerings or have been berries that the birds have dropped. But yeah, so I'm going to carry on down, work my way under this fallen oak branch, which again, part of me goes, well, clear it, it's a branch that's in the way, but at the same time, it's rotting wood, which is fantastic for the wildlife. It's great for beetles, great for the woodpeckers. So I might be tempted to leave that. I might just cut the end off so it's not laying on the hedge there and leave the rest of this. But that is from this very large oak tree here. But yeah, if we get to the other side of that, there's something else to point out. Natural little bird bath there. Sure, it's not good for the tree. It's interesting. So you'd think that this oak tree would be on the fence line. The wire fence is down there, it's laying on the floor. So I'll have to make sure that that's brought back up again. But I'm pretty sure the oak tree is well and truly in my land. But yeah, working down to the end here, that ridge kind of stops here, and again we've still got those large hollies on the ridge, and the last one is just there, which is just the other side on the field boundary. So I think I said earlier that I wasn't entirely sure the area of the land. That's because it is a really weird shape. So as you can see here, this is a straight line that comes down from the oak woodland. That is the straight line that goes across for the field section, and that I think is a straight line that goes across on the other side of the field section. But it makes this wonderful three-way triangle fence here. But yeah, so trying to work out the area is incredibly difficult. But yeah, that is the field, so let's make our way back to the gates now. Yeah, looks like the trees are holding hands. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video and found it interesting. It's taken me about 4 hours of walking around here, talking to the camera or talking to myself, whatever way you look at it. And it's taken me at least 3 attempts at recording the entire thing because I wasn't too happy with the first version or the second version. So hopefully this version has worked. I'm going to go in and have a well-deserved rest while I edit this video. I hope you've left it a like. I will go into more depth as I do each section, but for now I think this has just given you a rough glance at what I've brought and what I'm planning on doing. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on the shed build, and I shall see you later.